The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as personal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional or expert in the relevant field for personalised advice tailored to your specific situation.
It is a new change coming and it will impact a lot of jobs. Like I said, it is binary. So if your job can be coded into a process, it can be done by AI. Machine can learn it and can do the job. So I think people should not get scared of it. In our financial services industry, when we're looking at client situation, we use a lot of machine learning or the AI to help us understand how we can enhance the client situation better. So we do use that for our own strategy formulation, our different product recommendations. So it is quite important that we all embrace it. We look at changing the way things are changing, embracing the change and accepting it. You never know, you might even have an AI chip implanted into humans and we might be thinking better and faster. I don't know.
That'd be good. Welcome to the Wealth Guide podcast. We're super excited to talk about AI today. We want to discuss the question whether AI or artificial intelligence can give financial advice. I've got Ray, Ricky and Dean here with me today, and my name's Jasmine. I'm the General Manager at Ryker Capital. Oxford Language, which is a Google tool, describes AI as follows. It says it's the theory and the development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translations between language. Specifically, most of us have heard of the tool that OpenAI, a Microsoft-owned company, has recently developed and launched called ChatGPT. If you haven't had a play around with it yet, you definitely need to have a go at that. But what are your initial thoughts on that, guys?
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it is such an efficient tool, Jazz. Anytime I need to sort of search contents or search structures, I find that very, very useful. Would I completely rely on it? Maybe not. I'd like to think of it as an education tool, as an understanding tool, which provides me a little bit in-depth knowledge, but not where I want it to be.
Understood. What about you, Dean? It's a concept that's very intriguing.
It is very, very interesting. I think I even have fun with it, and I ask just like the most randomest questions to see if it actually answers everything. But no, look, like Ray was saying, I think I wouldn't entirely rely on everything specifically from it, but it's personally I use it as a great starting point for myself. So
It's the new theory, isn't it, Jazz? It's asking questions. I've like similar to the other two advisors, I have played around with it. I do like the concept of it. It's providing us new information. It provides us a way to do things better. It opens our brains to new possibilities. So it's certainly a really exciting way of doing things.
I might just give you guys an example of something that I've seen done with it recently that I thought was quite interesting. So most of us would be familiar with the story of Snow White. It's, an ancient fairy tale that we probably read to as kids. What ChatGPT was asked to do is to rewrite the story. So it was asked to rewrite the story, for instance, from Snow White's perspective. So instead of it being a story where we're following them all along the woods, the system simply rewrote it. And I mean, within seconds from Snow White's perspective. So it started off with, I got up this morning and I saw the prince and, so it is really incredible what it can do that would take a human a very long time to do, that would take a human, a lot of effort to think through. It can do it in seconds and it can do it pretty well. How do you guys feel about that in the context of taking that to, things like schools, for example? So we all had to sit through a lot of effort to pass our exams and do work. When I saw that, that's the first thing I thought of, like, whoa, that's not fair. That's so easy. You've got your whole essay done. What are your thoughts, Dean?
I think although as a society, we're looking at ways to try and make things more and more efficient. But I think there's going to be a fine line between if we were solely relying on things like the systems like that to actually provide us something with content. And I think mentally things are going to start changing for ourselves, because we're not going to be potentially as switched on, given that we're relying on so many other sources. And I'll use the most simplest example. Kids these days, when they're coming to do their maths tests, they've got the luxury of using a calculator and things like that. Whereas when I was at school, we used to have a non-calculated section where I had to actually sit down and calculate
I remember
everything.
that.
So
No, definitely. What are your initial thoughts? Are they positive or are they filled with concern, Ricky?
Well, Dad, we got to have an open mind for it. That's the day and age we live in. So imagine this telling your, teenager not to have an iPhone or have a smartphone. It's not going to go down well, is it? So it is the day and age we live in. So I think we should embrace it. Having ChatGPT or similar sort of AI function is helpful. However, it is, like Dean alluded to, it's the fine balance, making sure we are enhancing their mental ability. But also, if it's supplemented by another system, well, why not?
Right?
Look, I quite like it. I think, yes, there are things that you should be concerned about, in particular, the ability to absorb the information as to what you're doing with it. So, yes, you can put all the data in and for it to spit everything out for you, but what you also got to understand is understanding the knowledge and the structure behind it as to how you came about to that outcome. But if there is no learning at the back end of it, I feel that, and if it's just utilized to just do copy and paste, I think we've completely lost the purpose there. So it's good as an education tool, but I think to further utilize that, you just have to make sure that kids are understanding going, why is 2 + 2 = 4?
Very good points. That's interesting because I feel similar to yourselves that it's an opportunity and we should embrace it. But there was a study done recently, and this was conducted in 17 countries. Australia was one of these countries. And we actually placed last in our understanding of the benefits that we can get as a country, as a society, from AI.
wow.
So around, the four of us, I think there's a good amount of emphasis on the positive side of things. But there seems to be a good amount of fear of the unknown in the Australian population. And we are probably still in a phase of investigating what does this actually mean. For instance, in preparing for today's topic, Ray and I actually went to a seminar last week where someone spoke about how AI interacts in the financial services sector in particular. And one of the things that I didn't know was, since it was launched on the 30th of November 2022, it has actually improved its knowledge. So I think we're still, as a country, in that phase of investigating, well, what will that actually mean? But for me, really being able to learn some more of the facts about the system has helped me. Like, that's cool to know that. It learns from all the people that speak with it, all the people that interact with it or type things into it, and it becomes cleverer and cleverer. So what are your guys' thoughts there on balancing, I guess, the fear of the unknown as opposed to really looking at the benefits? I mean, you think about that, having to sit down and rewrite Snow White in the first person, that would take you an hour or two. The system can do that for you in a minute. That ability to then use those 2 hours to do something else that's productive. How do you guys feel about weighing up the pros and the cons of it?
Pros for me, Jazz, it's efficiency, right? As you sort of mentioned there. It makes us efficient in a sense that we are more productive and we are putting out more outcomes, whether it be, if I look at it for my job as an advisor, it not only sort of helps me put more productive outcomes for my client, but also frees up my time to sort of then serve other customer or other inquiries that a customer may have. So it does allow for the productivity side, where the cons sort of are, it would be more so around ensuring that system is reliable and is it giving me the right and the correct tools of the answer? Is there any misinformation in that will then provide the wrong advice?
So I guess my question is, do the benefits outweigh that thought in the back of everybody's mind that this really is just a system that's trained to use what's on the internet to provide you with an answer? But it is artificial intelligence. It does not have the ability to have emotions or to think. So it doesn't know whether the information it's giving back to you is actually true and correct. So this is why a lot of people are stepping back from it and saying, I'll use it for certain things, but I won't use it for everything. Whereas I think a lot of the experts are saying we need to be a tiny bit braver. We need to accept some of those potential negative consequences in order to reap the benefits of the efficiency and productivity gains. And that's a very personal question. We're a business that has to make that decision. What are your thoughts on that, Ricky? Would you take a leap of faith and accept some downside in order to gain the upside?
Yeah, this it's an interesting part with AI because it is more binary, right? If it's 0 then 1. So if the job involves doing a process work, then it could do it. If it's yes, no, problem. And in our job is a bit of science and art combined together. Science meaning we need to have understanding, we need to do education, we need to understand what, how strategies work, how finance works, need to know about super, need to know about insurance. So I suppose it could learn it. If I go into ChatGPT and type what is insurance, how does super work, I'm sure it would give you a better explanation than I can. However, it's this art part is where I'm a bit concerned about. It's attaching to the human element, attaching to that client's personal situation, how it would do. Just in preparation for this, I was actually just typing some scenarios in ChatGPT last night, and it did give me some scenarios that you could work with. However, I like to think of ChatGPT as a smart assistant. Like, it's really good, like a smart intern, knows his stuff, and it's just fresh out of uni, knows everything, you can ask him and he'll give you a quick answer. But it's just not there yet because it just can't relate to that human element. So I feel it may get there in future, but at this stage, I don't think it's quite there yet. But yeah, I'm like I said before, I am open to it, and I think we should embrace it.
It reminds me of my graduate days, Jazz, when I sort of first came out of university and with my suit and tie on, I think I knew everything about every sort of situation, going, right, this is the answer to this situation. Now, would I be sitting in front of a customer, or would the bank would have let me sit in front of a customer to go, here's our graduate who knows on a scale level, understands the basic concept of it all.
Yes.
But would I be able to then intrinsically align customers' components of different superannuation to the insurances, to the estate planning, and those intricacy part that will sort of overlap on each other?
Yeah.
Probably not.
It is an experience process that adds the value in a lot of the financial services context.
It does.
I think you're very right.
But in saying that, I think where it does make advisors' life a lot easier is it's a great education tool. So the time that we would have spent educating clients on going what super stands for, what insurance stands for, and the customers who have done that makes our life superiorly easier. Now customers understand those basic logic and structures around it. If not prior to that, our time would have spent educating on all those factors. And now how do we sort of mesh and gel them all together to come out to a perfect outcome for a customer from a tax perspective, from a super perspective, from an insurance perspective, from a Centrelink perspective. So now the magic and the art, as Ricky mentioned, in this structure is that you got to be able, as an advisor, to align all these structures together and provide an outcome for a client.
Din, you've heard the two advisors to your right and your left talk a little bit about, they would be brave enough. They would use it for certain things. I'm going to give you a scenario now, and I want you to tell me what your answer is after that, okay? So when you play with ChatGPT, you can do all sorts of things with it. It's really clever. It can, for example, rewrite a speech for you as a funny speech if you like. So if you've written it really seriously for one audience, but you want it to rewrite it for you for another audience and you want to make it funny. So it's very clever like that. But what it can't do is it cannot distinguish whether what it reads on the World Wide Web is true or not.
Wow.
So one example, for instance, that was presented to us at the conference that we attended was where ChatGPT was asked to write a speech about a particular concept, and it did. It wrote the speech, but what it did throughout the speech is it was quoting certain articles, and it was quoting certain sources. And when the person that was looking to deliver the speech tried to find those sources on the internet, they didn't actually exist.
Wow.
That's a bit scary moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to take that into account, and I want you to tell me, do you think the benefits outweigh those, those negatives, those scary thoughts that we still have about AI?
Well, look, once again, I'm a very big believer that ChatGPT can be used as a starting point, but I still think doing your own due diligence at the end of the day is going to be the most important part. Like, I wouldn't sit down and rely entirely on ChatGPT to give me an answer. But it's a great starting point, and it does have a lot of efficiencies to it. So
Even me, Jazz, when I was sort of playing around with it for our podcast yesterday, when I sort of throw in certain strategies and elements into it, there's a massive disclaimer at the bottom that comes with it. It goes, we highly recommend that you speak to a professional financial planner who can then outline your personal structures and financial position to align to create a strategy there for you. So I think we're pretty safe in that regards to ensure that whilst it's a great education tool, would I rely on it? Probably not.
But even to add to that as well, like we said on our previous episodes, when it comes to financial planning side of things, every single person's circumstances is different anyway.
Yeah.
So for ChatGPT to have one magic and understand that, then
it'd be very hard because my components in a super, and I'm going to throw the jargons out here, my taxable component, tax-free component in a super fund is very different to Dean's. It's very different to yours. My circumstances where I might have added super in my life is very different to yours and very different to Ricky's or everyone else for that matter. So how do I align those preferences? How do I align some of those tax structures? It's going to be very different. Now, I'm not talking about asset allocations here. I'm like, it provides a great tool to understand asset allocation, what asset allocation stands for, and what I should use. And I think it does that. It does solve that purpose for our line of work. But the intricacies around what we do and the craftsmanship that we do as financial planners when we're aligning all these different structures and strategies around planning someone's future out is very different.
And it is the future, Jad. I don't think we can run away from it. 100%. It is the future. So we should certainly be looking at how we can embrace it to make our lives easier.
And our clients.
And our clients, absolutely.
No, look, I couldn't agree with you more. Just because it's new and it's unknown doesn't mean we won't want to know more about it. I think in that same context, though, each individual and maybe even us as family units or us as a business and a team at work need to think about the ethical aspects of AI. So I want to take just a couple of minutes to get your thoughts on that. So for me personally, I think, for instance, having a speech written by a computer system and then passing it off as your own, that's quite a challenging concept for me because there's people that do that for a living. There's journalists that write articles for a living. There is a lot of themselves that they put into that in their career. There is also adjustments coming out to AI that will allow for AI to play you a piece of music, for example. That already exists, but it hasn't been launched to the market because of the concerns around what that will do to the music industry. Something where we can get the Wealth Guide podcast listeners a little bit of a rare opportunity to see into our own personal thoughts and our own personal minds. I am still thinking through how I feel about all of this from an ethical perspective. Ray, you're dying to chip in. So what are your thoughts?
Look, as far as ethical concerns goes, I think you can be manufactured into something that you're not, right? And it can literally take your voice and you can create articles based on saying that you actually said that article when you haven't, right? It can put up your photos into places that you don't want it to be. It can certainly has this massive ethical concerns that sits behind as good as ChatGPT is or that AI functionality is. Yes, there are sort of massive ethical concerns around it, but I think there should be an adequate policing from the government side or from the lawmakers to ensure that doesn't get breached.
There should be, but do we think that there is, Dean?
I think we just way too far.
Yeah, I think give it time. I think like anything, give it time. And as a lot of these revelations come to life, then I think that obviously potentially things like that will change anyway, whether it's going to be some governmental policing around it just to protect.
Well, my view, Jazz, is with the ethical issues, it is quite concerning. We can see that through Facebook, through TikTok, through Threads, whatever have you. and it learns what you like to watch, and it puts you that thing. Even Netflix has it. Even what you watch, and then based on that, it would recommend you things to watch. Ethical concerns are, it is artificial intelligence. It's not human intelligence. So it is being coded. So the person who coded it might have their own personal bias. So that could reflect that in there. So that does come into play as well. We have seen AI used during a lot of civil unrest. I don't want to name any platform, but things were coming up that people wanted to see that, and that would come up, and the democracies could have fallen because of this. So there is a lot of concern on how it's used on that. So it is important that the ethical concerns are really looked at, because it is quite a powerful tool. If you even think about it, until last decade, we really didn't care about privacy. Until internet really exploded, there was no privacy laws. It's actually when the internet's come out and Facebook's collecting data, all the social platforms collecting data, now we are worried about privacy, which when I was growing up, I had not heard about privacy law. Things that people are getting hacked, people are getting things done. So it is, and generally as you find, as things evolve, lawmakers are generally a bit slow in catching up, because they themselves are trying to understand how to grapple and get their head around this situation, because it may not be as simple. And the people who are developing it need to be very mindful of that, to ensure that they are also aware of ethical situation, because you can develop a technology, but how that technology get used is another question altogether. Like the facial recognition software, it was good to unlock iPhones, and could also be used to track citizens by the governments. So ethical concerns huge.
I agree. It just reminded me, I watched a movie with my girls over the weekend. Do you remember Robert De Niro, The Intern?
Yes.
If you haven't watched it, give it a go.
Movie.
So Robert De Niro, one of my favorite actors of all time, but he spent 20 years of his life making phone books. That was his job. So in a factory in the middle of Brooklyn, he made phone books. And my little daughter turned around to me and said,
"What's that?
Mum, what's a phone book?" And this is just one of these moments where I really understood that times have come such a long way and things have changed so much. If I think about my phone number being out there and my address being out there for someone to go to a random phone box in the middle of the street and be able to work out where I live, that's just, we would not even consider that anymore today. So I think it's really great that you've shared these examples with you. I'll just also give everyone some comfort. The lawmakers is one aspect of this, but the owners, Microsoft in this case, of OpenAI and ChatGPT, have spent a lot of time making sure that the system learns a little bit about making decisions that we would consider ethical as a whole. So obviously ethics as a whole, another topic, and everyone has different views, but very, very stark concepts. Like if you said to ChatGPT to do something illegal for you, for example, like tell me how to make a bomb, or tell me how to grow drugs, or whatever it is, it actually will refuse to do that for you. So it will say, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. And as we heard very much earlier in the session, it learns very quickly. So the more that we feed it those sort of contra indicators as well, it will learn what not to do. So there is a lot of work going into that, and that's probably given me a lot of comfort. All right, I want to talk about one more concept. We've spoken a lot about our own journeys with regards to understanding the concept of AI, understanding how we feel about it as people, and what it might mean for our families. I want to talk about this in the concept of a business. So we at Ryker Capital run a company. Our company feeds our families. It's very important to us. And I want to take everybody back to probably about 15 years ago, when there was the Kodak story. Does everyone remember the Kodak story?
Briefly.
So when we were little, we used a camera and we put film in it and we would take photos, and then we would go to the shop, have the photos developed. And Kodak was one of the most, successful companies in the world, and it was huge. And because taking photos is so popular and everybody did it, Kodak never thought that it would kind of become irrelevant. So it never did anything about researching all the new stuff. when phones came out and when digital cameras came out and when literally everybody had a computer or even a laptop, they were not able to jump on the bandwagon. They did not have the foresight to think about, what's my competition look like? How's the world moving? And that's probably just one of the messages that I wanted to send out with the Wealth Guide podcasts to all the people that listen, all the people that might run small businesses, or even thinking about how this will impact your family. Let's talk about some tips and some hints of what we recommend you should be doing in this context so that you're not left behind.
I think personally, I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be change. If we go look at even the last 10 years, 20 years, there's always something new and improved coming through. If we don't adopt the change and make it work for us opposed to fighting it, then unfortunately you're just going to be left behind. And I think that Kodak story is just imperative. It just shows to you the importance and the power of change. And try and, for myself, I try and, as much as I can, try to stay a step ahead.
And it's just, like we've already talked about, it is a new change coming and it will impact a lot of jobs. It is like I said, it is binary. So if your job can be coded into a process, it can be done by AI. Machine can learn it and can do the job. So I think people should not get scared of it. In our financial services industry, when we're looking at client situation, we use a lot of machine learning or the AI to help us understand how we can enhance the client situation better. So we do use that for our own strategy formulation, our different product recommendations. So it is quite important that we all embrace it. We look at changing the way things are changing, embracing the change and accepting it. And also future generations to learn about it. And there will be a massive disruption in employment. There will be new jobs that we don't know at the moment will be created. There might be an AI person in every office doing a job. It is possibility, and you never know. You might even have an AI chip implanted into humans, and we might be thinking better and faster. I don't know.
That'd be good.
So it's a possibility.
I think that's a really well thought out response, Ricky. In Australia, there haven't been any studies that I'm aware of on how this will impact our workforce, but I'm from Europe, so I've always got a little bit of a connection back to that. They have done some studies in Europe. So 300 million workers are potentially going to be impacted by the current state of the ChatGPT revolution. 300 million workers
That's just
are
huge
likely
impact
to
to society.
are likely to experience some impact. But I really loved where the creator of the conference that we attended took that to last week, because what he explained was that this is an opportunity for you as a business. This is an opportunity for you as a business to have the worker pass off part of their workload to AI, have it done by coding machines, but that then creates the ability for the person to have more capacity on that day. So as long as we as leaders in the business world, or, at home with your family, make sure that that time is used really efficiently, this should actually be a benefit for us. Not only did he talk about increasing productivity, and I mean, let's think back to what happened when computers were invented. It changed the world. My father told me this story one day where he said, well, before when I used to run meetings, I would have my secretary sit there and type up the agenda, and she needed to type that up 30 times because he had 30 people in his team. So the lady would sit there all day and type the agenda up 30 times, and then she would hand that out. And then when they had a photocopy machine enter their workforce, that was not the case. She typed it up once, she popped it in the photocopier, and that was a 10-minute exercise. So this is why I am personally excited about this prospect of AI or ChatGPT. Because if I in my lifetime can be part of another really huge event like that, where we see productivity increase by 10, 20, 30, 40%, that means prosperity and wealth. But I really also love the fact that he closed off his thoughts by saying that it also will give the business world an opportunity to talk about employees' mental health and well-being, because we've been trying very hard in the last decade to increase productivity with really trying to get more out of a person. We're now probably at a point where that's like drawing blood from a stone. So if as business owners, we can use this as an opportunity to create that productivity, let's do that right now. Don't wait. It's okay to accept some of the potential downsides if you've got risk controls in place. And what you can do as a result of that is really give your workforce back time, allocate some of that to health and well-being and sustainability of your workforce, allocate some of that time to productivity increases. And overall, that should then lead to, the prosperity of that business that you're part of. So I really love that concept. Any thoughts from you guys in closing about ChatGPT, about AI?
I'm very excited about the future as to what ChatGPT brings to myself personally and to the business. I think, like you mentioned many times before, Jazz, the productivity is going to be the key element, but it will also give us at the same time the employees that work within the business to enhance their skill sets and learn other aspects of the role, which will, again, really challenge the ability to grow and to sort of learn the new skill sets.
And be happier. I mean, who doesn't like to do a job quicker, faster, and better?
Exactly.
I think it's an awesome tool.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think for myself, it's more. It's such a big change coming through. I'm just excited to see what it's going to look like. So that should be good.
Fantastic. Final words to you, Ricky.
Jazz, I'm quite excited about it. I am open to the possibility. However, the ethical concerns are still huge. People do not understand how powerful it can be. It knows more about people than people know about themselves. There was a study about Facebook that Facebook knows about the people its member than the government knows about their own citizens. So it is quite a powerful tool. The ethical concerns that come along with it really needs to be looked at and addressed appropriately in order to make sure that it is used in a way that's designed to use. But really, really great tool.
Amazing. Well, I want to just thank everybody that watched this episode of the Wealth Guide podcast. My advice to you is just be really open and interested in this topic. If you run a business, see how it's going to impact you. Think about how it's going to allow you to serve your clients better, and think about what you're going to do with those productivity gains. Most importantly, though, don't ignore it. Have a plan in place. And that also goes through to all of our clients. Having a financial plan in place will make your future better. So we encourage you all to do that. If you enjoyed this episode and if you want to hear more, please make sure that you like this episode, you subscribe to the channel. And if you're on any of the other platforms, please follow us so that you are alerted to the next episode.